Jean, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
I must say I am enjoying Crux. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
So Crux is the story of me trying to confront my lifelong obsession with my father, trying to reconcile the man that he became with the man that he once was. When I was a little girl, he was my primary caretaker. My mother's a doctor, so she was busy with patients, and so I spent most of my time with him. And I just have these really vivid memories of him taking me outside and discovering the natural world with me. He would take me to the coast of Baja and take me to the tide pools and pull out hermit crabs and seaweed and place it in my hands and tell me what everything was called. And he would point at the ocean and tell me these fascinating stories about all the things that lived inside the ocean. So I just have these really vivid memories of my father being this person who was full of wonder and curiosity and playfulness. And then one day it was gone. My father started sleeping all day and eventually became convinced that the CIA was after him, started doing things like wrapping himself up in aluminum foil. And my mother told me that he had paranoid schizophrenia. He had his own fantastical tales about what the CIA was doing to him. And I didn't know what was going on. All I knew as a child was that whatever was happening had taken my father away from me. And it's something that has obsessed me ever since, and I've wanted to solve it. And as an adult, I decided to do it through journalism.
Your writing is beautifully descriptive, even some situations that happen between your parents that predate your birth. Did you give yourself creative license? Where do you draw the line between facts and poetry?
So I did an MFA program that was very adamant about memoir being the truth and nothing but the truth, because if you start to exaggerate, if you start to have creative license, then you cheapen the genre. People will be less inclined to read memoir because they read it in part because they think it's true. So I was very careful and rigorous with my reporting and making sure that I adhered to those ethical journalistic standards. However, there are chapters in there that are told entirely from the point of view of my father, for example, things that he believed happened to him, told from his point of view. And so I frame those chapters within the context of our conversation so that the reader knows that what I'm telling them is, this is what my father told me, not necessarily this is what was happening. But I wanted to honor the complexity of my father's reality, and doing so basically entailed creating this tapestry of stories, stories from his point of view, stories from my grandmother's point of view, as well as my own memories and my own reporting.
And as a journalist who reports on stories along the U.S.-Mexico border, what is it like for you now being a journalist during this time with this heightened emotion and attention being paid to immigration?
Right. Well, lately I've been covering the family separation issue and seeing the children being taken away from their parents. It's definitely something that I can identify with. Not to say that my experience is anywhere close to what these children are experiencing, but I know what it means. I know what it feels like to be physically and emotionally separated from a father, and there's trauma associated with that. So that's something that I'm definitely familiar with, and when I'm reporting on these issues, it touches me as a human as well as a journalist.
And lastly, what do you hope readers take away from Crux?
So Crux for me is really about the fact that the truth is always way more complex than we think it is. When I thought I understood my father, when I saw him as only someone who had paranoid schizophrenia, and I thought that label encompassed who he was, that's when I started having these self-destructive tendencies, because I was doing violence to my concept of the truth and of humanity. I was being reductionistic in terms of my thinking about my father. Not to say that paranoid schizophrenia isn't a perfectly valid diagnosis, but in terms of my father, it really limited my understanding to one very specific realm. And when I opened up my thinking to entertain other possibilities, it brought me closer to my father and also set me free from him in a way, because I was able to separate myself from him by having empathy and a more complicated understanding.
Jean Guerrero, KPBS Frontiers reporter and author, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.